Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we successfully load our two of this form, that is our user form, and also that is our another form I have loaded with our another field as a Facebook ID and the profile picture. So now I want to submit this form. Okay, so when it should be submitted, that means when this user will put that username, password, email field, Facebook ID, and choose the profile picture, and after that it should be registered. So here then this registered data will be saved in our database. And also I want to define some of the validation. When this register will be completed, then I want to display some of the message. Okay, so here I want to display some of the message as a successfully registered. And if you want to register it again, then you have to go to that register page, that means the home page, and after that home page you have to come to our this register page. Then this register form will be loaded. Okay, so how can define this type of validation? I also want to show you that things with the live example. So for doing this, we have to work in our view page. So there is our base HTML, we don't need this. There is a URL, also we don't need this. There is a register. So into the register here you can see there is actually our two forms. So now I have to define two of this form data and we have to insert it with our database. So that is our form, that is our model. So right now we don't need this. Okay, it's better I just take it. So that is actually our view. So now we have to work in our view area. So here, as I told you, I also want to define some of the validation. When this register will be successfully created, then it should be detected this same page with some of the notification. So for the reasons here in our register, that means in our register function area, we have to work. So here I want to first of all take one of the variable as a registered. Okay, registered. So into the registered area, first of all I want to make the things as a false. Okay, I just make the things as a false first, and after that I want to define one of the condition as a if condition, and into the if condition I have to pass this post all that form data, right? So into the register I have passed that as a post method. So here we have to pass it. So as I told you before, it should be just like that same condition. So here we have to pass that things with the request and then method, right? So with this request method, first of all it will be check it's a post method or not. So I just simply define that post, right? And then our two of this form. So I have already defined our two of this form. One will be as a user form data. So here I have defined two of these. One will be as a user form and a user info form. So now I just simply defining it. I just copy it, and here I take as a user form, and in the user form area we have to define this input model. So that is our user form, right? So here I have to pass it. So before we have defined as a request as a post, that means a request and then post. So friend, before we just simply whatever the data we will get, then we just simply pass it, right? So now I want to actually first of all take this data temporary. So for taking this data I want to define here one of the variable as a data. Sorry, I just take one of the variable as a data. So whatever the request I pass from our register, okay, whatever the request I pass from our register from our user form, first of all I want to actually take this data. So here I want to hold this data and take the things with this data variable. So here I simply defining it. And also we have to do the same things. We have to do the same things for our another one. So here I have to define our another one. So I have another one as a user info form. So I just simply define as a user info form, and then our model name as a user info form. And then also I want to hold this data with this request posted data. That means whatever the post you get, it should be hold this data into this data area. I hope you can well understand about it. And now we have to validate it, right? So now we have to validate it. So after that I have defined another if condition. When our user form, that means the user form is valid or not. So is underscore valid. So I just simply define as a valid, and also they have the another one. For the reasons we have to also define as a and our another one as a user info form, because they have the two form, right? Before I have already discussed about only the one form data, but right now they have the two form data. You can see they have the two form data. One is the user form and that is the user info form. So they have the two form data. So for the reasons here I define our validation as a user form is valid and our another user info form is valid or not. So I just simply define as is underscore valid. So I also define that as is valid or not. Now I want to save it. So after that I want to save that our user and then this user form, the user underscore form into the user form data I want to save. So I just simply save it. And also here we have to pass that our password. So for the password I have defined that user, and with this user I want to define our save password. That means whatever the password you will put on particular that position, as I told you, it should be created one of the encrypted password, right? So for creating this encrypted password, they have also one of the another function. So you have to define as a set underscore password, right? So here you have to define the set password, our user this password field. So I just simply define our password. So when this password will be saved, so before save it should be change that password, and after that it should be save again. So I just simply define this user will be save this data again. Okay friend, so here I have defined our 3 of this field. So with this condition I have saved our 3 of this field. One is our username field, password field, and email address field. And also they have the another 2 of this field as a Facebook ID and the profile picture, right? Also we have to defining it. So here after that, so that is our one part. That means here, as I told you, I have defined 2 of this field. One is one of the form as our user form data, another is our user information form data, right? So I have already declared our user form. So now we have to also define our user form data. So into the user form data area, I have already defined our 2 of this field. You can see into the user form area, I have defined the Facebook ID and the profile picture. So now also we have to defining it. So after this here I define as a user underscore info. So I just simply define as a user info, and here our form name I have defined that our form name will be as a user info form. So now with this user info form I want to save this data. I just simply save it. So before we actually pass that data with the commit, right? With this commit we pass that things as a true, right? So right now I want to make the things as a hold. Because of all, they have also another field I have to declare. I have another field here as a profile picture, right? Also we have to add it. So for the reasons here I want to do in particular that area, I want to make the things as a false. So I just make the things as a false. And after that here also we have to define with our user info. So with this user info here we have to define our user. That means our user model. So that is our user model library user. And then I want to compare it with our if you go here into this model area, I have already defined our one of the model as a on-to-one field model with our user on delete as a model cascade, right? So I just take that part. That means when this user will be deleted, this user related all data should be deleted. For the reasons here I take the things with this our variable. That means here I have already defined that things in our user info class. So now we have to also add it. So here in particular that position I just simply add it. Okay, and then also our another field I have. So I have another field as a profile picture. So we have to also defining it. So after that I just simply define another if condition, and into the if condition area I just simply define our field name as a profile piece. So here I just simply define is in request. So if you want to pass that actually image, then you have to define like that way. So you have to pass it into the profile picture in request and then files. Okay, then you have to pass it. So that is actually the common things. If you actually inhabit it with this, then you can well understand about it, because every time you have to use the same logic. So I just simply define as a in request and the files, and then I just simply define our user. So with this user info. So previously I have already passed our another field on here. So now I want to pass it again. I want to pass our picture. So if you want to pass it, that's our in our user info. Into the user info I define that our field name as a profile. Okay, profile picture, and then with this request I requested our all that file request data. That means here we have to define that files. So I just simply define as a files, and our field is file as a profile piece. So I just simply define as a profile piece. And now after that I want to save this data. So here I want to save this data. So that is our user info. So here before I have already saved this data and I just make the things commit as a false, right? Now that is our user info. So with this user info, I want to save this data. So now I just simply save it. So it's may little hard for you, don't worry, I will explain it again, then it should be very much clear to you. And also after that before, first of all, when this request will be started, I make that registered as a false, right? Now I successfully complete our this part, that means here our for first form data. So into this first form data I save it. So into the first form data they have the three field, username, password and the email address. So I just simply define that condition. Into the if condition I have simply defined our all that field on here. Only I change it in our password field. Into the password field I change it and make that our password as a encrypted password. For the reasons here I define one of the function as a set password, right? So that is actually our one form data, and this one actually for our another field data. That means our another field I have already defined our another field as a Facebook ID and the profile picture, right? So you can see I define as a user info. So with this user info I save this data, and first of all I commit it. Because of all I have also another field, I have another field as a profile picture, and then I just simply define that our profile picture in particular that area. So that is our profile picture. If you want to pass some of the images into the request area, then you have to pass it with the profile picture in request and then files. Okay, and then I just simply define our request for that file. That means the images requested file. I just simply pass that request, and then I just save our this user information data. That means this user data I just simply save it. And also here I define one of the condition. That means in our user profile, as I told you before, here I have defined one of the condition as a model will be as a cascade on delete cascade. So that means when this user will be deleted, automatically this user related all that Facebook URL and also the image, that means the profile, will be deleted, right? So for that reasons here, friend, I have defined this part. That means here that is actually our all that user details, and also I defined that this user, they have the another field, they have one of the is a Facebook URL. So here there is a Facebook URL. So for the reasons here you can see I define with this user info our this user, that means this user. So here I have defined that our user data, user form data, you can see user form data, I just take the things with this save data. So for the reasons here I define this user equal to our user, and this user means in our model our this user. Okay, I hope it should be now very much clear to you. So that is actually user, that means our this user, that means the form data all that user, and here I committed it with our this user in our model our this user. Okay, so for the reasons when this data, that means when this our user will be deleted, this user related all that our Facebook URL and also the profile image will be deleted. And after that I want to actually save it. So now I think every line is very much clear to you. So now you have to actually practice it. I think you already know about every line, how that things exactly work. So now friend, before first of all when this request is started, I just make that registered as a false. So now we have to make the things as a true. Okay, so here after this I just simply define this register will be as a true. So I just name it as a true. So now it should be as a true. And after that, that is our another forms. That means if we didn't get any data, then it should be actually load our this form. So for the reasons here we have to define one of the else condition. So here after this in particular that area I define as a else. Okay, I just simply define as a else it will be load this part. That means else it should be load our this user form data, and that is our user form data. So I just simply load it on here. That means in our else area it should be loaded. Better I just simply defining it on here. Okay, so that means else it should be load our empty form. So that is our empty form data, and then your dictionary, into the dictionary area I have to pass it. So into the dictionary area I want to pass our user form, then our user info form, and now also we have to pass our this registered true data. So that is actually in our registered. So also we have to now pass it. So here after that I just simply pass our this registered data. So I just simply pass it. So now we have to add this registered in our register HTML. That means here. So here after this I want to define one of the if condition first. because as I told you, we have to define when this user will be registered, then it should be rejected to show some of the message. It should be not display that form. Okay, so here I define on the if condition. If is registered, that means if is registered is true, then it should be display one of the dev. So better after this I just take one of the dev, and dev class I define one of the bootstrap class as a alert success, alert success, and here it should be show some of the message as a congratulations. Okay, congratulations, registration successfully, okay, successfully done. So this type of one of the messages should be display, and else. So also after that we have to do better. I just take the things on here. Okay, and after this it should be displayed the else. So I just simply define that else, the double percentage, and the else, and else it should be load this form. Okay, else it should be load this form, and also we have to finish our if condition. So after that form, here I just simply define as and if. Okay, hope you can well understand about it. So here I define that if condition. If is registered, that means if this registered is true, then it should be display our this dev, else it should be display our form, right? Now that's all you have to do. So now let's check this out. If you get any error, we will solve it, so they have no worry about it. So now I just click as a save all, and now I want to check it, our server. Yeah, you can see they have no error, it's now perfectly running. So now I want to refresh our page, and here it's showing some of the error message as a view logging app views registered did not return that HTTP response. HTTP response means maybe we define some of the conditions, like here we define that condition that is actually the if condition. You can see we have to actually go outside from to this if condition. So if you want to go outside from to this condition, you have to start that things from here. So I just simply defining it, and then also that is we have to actually go outside from to this if condition. Okay, so and then that is our else, and then our dictionary. So now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all again, check it again, everything is running well. Now I just refresh it. Yes, now you can see it's now perfectly loaded. So because of all here, I am defining that our else into our if condition area. So you have to go outside from the if condition. So from here you have to start it. Okay. So now friend, let's check this out. Our register is perfectly working or not. So now I want to define one of the a name as a Kazi, and define the password as a 12345. And then I define that email address as a kazi@gmail.com. And here you have to define as a HTTP. So right now I'm using that HTTPS, and then our facebook.com and the test. Okay, so that will be our Facebook ID, and I just choose some of the image. So right now for education purpose I'm actually using this image. Okay, now open it. So that is actually the image, and now I want to click as a register. Yes, now you can see friend, now it's showing as a congratulations, registration is successfully done. And also here I define this type of one of the condition, when our this registration will be completed, then our this form not be visible, right? So for the reasons here I have defined our else condition. First of all, here I have defined that as a register. If this register is true, then our this position will be displayed. Here I have passed that register in our register area, that means in our register HTML. Into the register HTML, here you can say define that if condition, and into the if condition, if this register is true, then it should be display our this position, that means this dev. So for the reasons here you can see it's now showing our this dev, but else it should be display our this form. Right now we are successfully registered, that means our registration is successfully done, that means our register is true. For the reasons you can see it's only showing this message, our form is not visible. But if you go to that home, and after that if you click on the register, you can see our register form is again loaded. So now let's check this out, our everything is perfectly inserted or not. Now go to our database. So that is our user. Now I just refresh it. Yes, now you can see friend. Now our username I have defined as a Kazi. That email address is also visible if you open it. So you can see there is actually username field I have defined as a Kazi. So that is our email address is also visible, and also it's created one of the encrypted password. You can see it's automatically created one of the encrypted password on here. And also you can see there is for the user only this portion, that means the permission as active is selected. So this user is not that super admin user, for the reasons our two of this field is not defining. Okay, so it's now successfully in getting all the data. That means here it's now perfectly getting it, and that is our last logging and the joining date. Everything is now perfectly visible, and also here I define our image. So now let's check this out. If you go here and go to that profile, you can see into the profile our image, that means this image I have uploaded. So it's now perfectly now display. Okay, that means our image is also perfectly uploaded in our media, and to the profile pieces, that is actually one of the folder here is now perfectly updated. So this profile image, and also I have defined another field as our Facebook URL. So here I have saved two of these in our another model, right? So here I have save two of these in our user info. That means here I have defined two of this field. So if you go to our database, that means in our admin area, go to home. So that is our model as a user info. So now if you open that user info, you can see that is also created as a Kazi. So into this Kazi, you can see there is actually our specific user is now visible. So that is our username is visible, the Facebook ID. So I have defined that Facebook ID as a fb.com then /test, and also you can see it's now showing our picture. So that is our profiles. Into the profiles folder, that is our design 1111 PNG, right? So for the reasons you can see it's now perfectly saved this data, that means this image data in particular that folder area. That means we successfully complete our registration process. So now if you want to create new one, I just name it as Aryan again, and I just put the password as a 12345 and aryan@gmail.com, and I just put some of the Facebook ID. So here I define as a Facebook at the /Aryan, choose another image, and I choose this one, okay, or this one. Click as open. There is a design 10. Click as a register. Yeah, registration is successfully completed. So now go again and check it. You can see to the profile there is another picture is added. So there is our picture I have uploaded. It's perfectly uploaded. And go to our admin. Into the admin, if you go here, go to the user info, you can see there is actually the Aryan, and there is our user is created as Aryan. There is a Facebook ID is also perfectly added, and there is our profile image is also perfectly added, right? And also if you go to our user portion, and with the user portion here you can see there is a Kazi, and the email address I have defined, that is our kazi@gmail.com, and also into the staff status you can see there is actually the active for the super admin, and these for two of this user they have no permission. So we successfully create our register page, right? So right now we successfully complete our register page, and from here we send our two of this data. That means three of this field data is saved in our user table, and also this two data is saved in our user info table. So we successfully did that work. I hope you can well understand about it. So that is our form related all that issues. So we successfully complete our registration portion. So how can logging with this user? In our next video I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.